Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole, and I am the parent support worker for the EarlyON Niagara Catholic District School Board EarlyON Child and Family Center. I am here today for our weekly coffee and conversation in which all parents, grandparents, guardians, and caregivers are welcome. Our program topics revolve around ensuring that you feel well, confident, and present in your parenting and caregiving role. As always, if you are unable to sit with me now, you are more than welcome to warm up your coffee and sit with me at a later, more convenient time. You can find our videos on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our videos. Today's chat will help us sort of pat ourselves on the back for everything that we have learned over the past 9 weeks together. If you've been following along, you will have learned so much about children's stress. Our first week focusing on Kids Have Stress 2 content, we started very small by simply starting our conversation about stress. We learned that it's important to focus on our kids' stress because too much stress can affect their ability to concentrate, learn, and get along with others. It can affect their health, and it interferes with their ability to think and focus. We then broke down what stress really is by looking at the chemical and neurological response to stress, causing an increase in the hormones adrenaline and cortisol. And you'll remember that the heightened state caused by the release of cortisol can last for days. We then reminded ourselves that positive, responsive caregiving can decrease the likelihood of problems developing from that experience of stress. Finally, in this first week, we focused on our own stress. In this way, we were able to start learning about childhood stress without our own stress weighing us down. Recall the importance of the following stress management tips provided by American Psychological Association and edited by Brown for a Positive Psychology article. We want to be sure that we understand our stress, identify the stress sources, become aware of our stress signals, recognize our stress strategies, whether they be good or bad, make self-care a priority, and finally ask for support when needed. I hope that you've continued utilizing these strategies to help manage your own stress over the 9 weeks. The following week after that, we began to dig a little deeper into understanding stress by learning about the developmental considerations for reducing stress. Specifically, in this week, we covered social emotional development, self-regulation, and attachment. We talked about how rapidly children develop their abilities to experience and express emotions. However, they are in need of emotionally aware, responsive, and consistent adults to help teach them the vocabulary to express those emotions so that they may express they feel overwhelmed by too many activities instead of having a tantrum because they don't know how to vocalize that stress. Likewise, we discussed the importance of self-regulation, so the child's ability to manage those feelings, thoughts, and actions in order to meet their higher goals, and that this ability begins with the external regulation from a caring parent. Remember, we can't expect our children to know how to calm themselves down in a stressful situation if they are unable to recognize that they are at a heightened state and in need of managing the associated behavior. And then we finish this week off by considering attachment. So your early connection with your children teaches them that when they are stressed, when they are hungry, cold, or whatever, they can be soothed and protected and loved by you. And this will help them in regulating their own emotions as they grow. In the week after this one, we continued the discussion of developmental influences by considering temperament and gender differences. We focused on temperament because it determines how our child's sensitivity and response to stress will be. So we know now that our child's temperament or behavioral style might influence how they handle and perceive stressful situations. For example, if one of your child's temperament traits is being highly sensitive, then perhaps they get stressed from tactile stimulation, such as itchy socks or bright lights. Then we looked at gender differences to understand the inherent differences in boys' and girls' brains that are present from birth. For instance, girls might be able to express their emotions earlier than boys because of the way that their brain develops. The final week, considering developmental influences, looked at self-esteem and resiliency. So we talked about the ways in which your child's development of self-identity and sense of self can affect their stress. We know that when a child receives positive feedback and praise for effort and achievement, it will actually help the child to internalize those positive thoughts about themselves, which then in turn build their self-esteem. So if you'd recall, we need to treat our kids respectfully, ask their views and opinions, take them seriously, give them meaningful and realistic feedback, and appreciate their interests and efforts. We then considered how children with a good self-esteem are more resilient, and resiliency ended up being another component to handling stress. So because resiliency means our children can essentially bounce back from adversity, we know that with resilience, they'll be able to overcome and bounce back from stress. So we need to build up our kids' self-confidence in dealing with stressors. Now that we truly and fully understand stress and what might contribute or affect the stress response, we looked at important concepts for the Kids Have Stress Too program. So these important concepts would then assist you in utilizing the strategies that followed. So we started with the 8 key concepts of the program, the building blocks in recognizing, understanding, and dealing with childhood stress. So these included your role in helping children learn to manage stress. Number 2, that there are signs and symptoms of too much stress. Remember, not all stress is bad. Number 3 is that children will cope better with stress if they can recognize, acknowledge, and express their feelings. We know this to be true. Number 4 is that relaxation can reduce stress symptoms. Number 5 was that children can learn to problem solve. Number 6 was that we can create a less stressful home for our kids. Number 7 was using a positive self-voice can help lower stress. And number 8, physical activity can help you cope with stress and promote self-regulation. So you'll see after looking at this list that we've talked about all of these things in our 9 weeks. So it's nice to see it all come together. In addition to this, we considered the reasons why we focus on this for all 9 weeks. So number 1, we know that stress is a normal part of everyday life. We can't avoid it, so let's face it right on and learn how to deal with it. Number 2 is that life is just more complicated today. Living through a pandemic, it's hard to deny that one. Number 3 is that childhood should be a time for learning. Number 4 is that teaching kids coping skills will provide them with tools for life. Number 5 is that parents and caregivers have a role in helping kids manage their stress. And number 6 is that parents know their children better than anyone else. So that feels good. We know that we are doing our part. And then finally, we looked at the Kids Have Stress Too program utilization of the stress stoplight. And from this point on, we were able to visualize our kids moving from the red light, which indicated stress, to the yellow light that indicated change, to finally the green light that indicated a successful coping with stress. From this point, we moved on to learn how to recognize stress in our children. So as a reminder, we discussed 3 types of stress in this week. The positive stress, so like the stress we feel before a presentation. We talked about tolerable stress, so this could be stress of a parental separation. And then there are toxic or chronic stress, which is a long-lasting and uncontrollable type of stress, such as if the child does not have caring adults in their life to support them. From there, we considered the way that stress might present itself, either through the body, like experiencing headaches or tummy aches, through the mind, like poor concentration or forgetfulness, through feelings like becoming restless or frustrated, and or through behavior like if they suddenly become more clingy or struggle sleeping. And then we considered what it is that causes stress for our little ones. We talked about, starting at a new school, separating from parents, or even being hungry. But what's most important to remember from this week was that parents know their kids best. You know what's normal and in a typical range for your child. So we want to look for changes in their behavior, but then also see beyond that behavior. Consider if it is a stress behavior, and then finally use your judgment. You are the expert. Our last 3 weeks looked at stress prevention strategies, stress reduction strategies, and problem solving. So starting with stress prevention, we noted that stress can't literally be prevented. Our kids will be stressed, and we don't necessarily want to protect them from all kinds of stress because we want them to learn how to cope. Within this week, we learned a few strategies that help prevent stress. So the first was to have a conversation with your child about what stresses them. The only way to prevent stress is to really know and appreciate what your child considers stressful, because it likely won't be the same thing we consider stressful. Then we learned to stop, look, and listen to our kids at least once a day. We were reminded here that no matter what's going on, whether your child seems fine or not, if they have something to say, we need to stop, look, and listen. We then discussed ways in which we can make our home less stressful for children by assessing the lighting, decluttering, and or tidying up, utilizing music, and if we can, creating a comfy corner. Finally, we considered a list of protective factors that we want to implement into our children's daily lives, like getting enough free time and eating healthy, well-balanced food. But with this list that we discussed, we were reminded that each family can learn to provide their child with their own list of protective factors based on their abilities and their own understanding of their child's needs. The week after this, we considered stress symptom reduction strategies. So this means, okay, we know that we can't prevent all kinds of stress. So what do we do when we're presented with stress? Within this conversation, we discussed 4 different strategies. First, we discussed some quick ways to relax. So these strategies were consistent with our very early days of Coffee and Conversations, which prompted us to slow down, take deep breaths, and stretch our bodies. We also talked about utilizing our imaginations. So can we teach our kids to imagine themselves coping successfully with a stressor before that stressor presents itself? For example, a visit to the doctors. Or they can use that imagination to take them to any place in the world that makes them happy, especially if that place is Grandma and Grandpa's house because they miss them during the pandemic. 2 other strategies we discussed to reduce stress symptoms revolved around the child's self-talk. So we emphasize the importance here of listening to our positive voice and ignoring that negative voice in our heads. Remember, we want to encourage our kids to make lists of things that they can do and always replace a negative comment with a positive one. Finally, we discussed the benefits of physical activity in reducing stress. The key point here was to be active role models. Physical activity will benefit your own well-being as well, so let's demonstrate this for our kids. And then last week, our very final discussion revolved around the idea of problem solving. So if you'd recall, problem solving is an effective strategy to help children find multiple ways to deal with a problem. We discussed the what if game to help our kids get creative about solutions. And we'll want to remember here that it's not that we're searching for a perfect answer. It's okay if your child comes up with an irrational solution, like pushing their sibling, but it gives us an opportunity to expand their ideas and find a different, probably better solution. And then we had this STEPS model to help our children assess the problem and consider solutions. Remember, we want to identify the problem. We want to assess how big, so we used our hand here to do that. We want to generate possible solutions, which we can utilize the what if game to help us here. We want to consider potential outcomes of those solutions. So, what's going to happen if you choose to push your sibling? And then once we have tried one of these solutions, we want to evaluate them. Did it work well? Do we need to try something else? So, one of the most important messages from last week was to ask yourself the following 2 questions. Number 1, is now a good time for my child to problem solve or to try these strategies? Are they calm, ready to learn, and ready to talk? And number 2, is now a good time for me to help them? Can I give them my undivided attention? And these questions are really important to ask yourself before starting any of the mentioned strategies. Are they ready? Am I ready? Let's come together when we're both ready so that we can tackle the issue together. So that's a wrap on our Kids Have Stress Too learning. I hope this recap demonstrated just how much we've learned together in the past 9 weeks. I am so very proud of us all. Attached to this video, I'm going to be providing you with a lengthy list of resources if you'd like to continue your learning. I want you to feel free to check these out. And please don't hesitate to send us a message if you have any questions regarding this program. For one last time, I want to thank the Strong Minds, Strong Kids Psychology Foundation of Canada for creating this program that I've been able to share with you all. It was chock full of amazing information, and I'm so glad that we've had this opportunity together. Next week, we are going to be introducing the next segment of our Coffee and Conversations. If you'd like a head start on preparing for this segment, you can look up the book called Love Builds Brains by Dr. Jean Clinton. She is a Canadian professor and doctor of psychiatry. Dr. Clinton is renowned nationally and internationally as an advocate for children's issues and has written this book for parents and professionals alike to really understand how our love and connection with children can and will literally build their brains. So after our introduction next week, we will start on the book study together. So if you're interested in following along, you can purchase her book and start reading. Otherwise, you can just learn with me through the videos that I provide. Be sure to check out our upcoming poster for this, where you'll find the Facebook group that you can join for exclusive book club content. I cannot wait to start this new adventure together, but that is it for now. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon.